Okay, so I've gone over this several times already in these videos. I'm just about to do 5 to 7 minutes of general scoring comments, a word or two about layout, overall quality of the texture of your scores, and please do read this list if this is the first you've seen of it. Watch the whole video, listen to feedback given to other participants and other videos as well. And you should know that there's going to be a lot of things I don't have time to mention, but I still notice them, okay? And others will comment on them too. And, if you're going to repost your score for more comments, maybe just give it a couple of weeks before you do it so that so in situations like this, I don't, get the wrong version or whatever. And definitely this last comment definitely this last note here to comment on each other's scores with and finally this last note here to comment on each other's scores with feedback and support. It's really, really important. That is what is making this challenge work on Facebook. Okay, so if you're watching this in the Facebook feed, take a minute to comment below, or maybe find their score. Find the score of the person you want to talk to, and find it in the feed by their name, or with hashtag Ravel Challenge 1, and give them some support. If you like their score, give them a compliment. If you have something you'd like to add to what I said, then let them know that too. Okay, it really helps make this whole thing work. Thanks so much. Our first score up is by Guillermo, and once again, I'm not doing these in any particular order, just whatever, however they're sitting on my desktop right now after I looked at them. So this is a very fun score. Guillermo has some opening remarks, which are worth reading if you're going to take a look at this score too. He's interested in recapturing certain qualities of Ravel's scoring, and that's admirable. Although I think he takes his own liberties towards his own interpretation. It's not, it's more along his personal voice, I think, and that's fine. There's really no need to, as Guillermo says, to try and imitate Ravel's own style. I mean, you can do it in any style you like for this challenge. It doesn't really matter. And he's transposed everything to D, which, I think that is totally fine as well. It's a more resonant key. So let's go on with this and see what he did. There's nice clear solos with the winds. There's a couple of places where there's what I feel kind of unnecessary doubling, like here, A2 flutes joining up with the clarinets, and then sort of this is kind of like a dovetail passage. This should actually be the opposite, right? This should be, rather than them both going crescendo, if you want the quality of one to eventually take over from the other, you want diminuendo, right, at the end of the line. I would say starting here, have a diminuendo hairpin, and then the two lines will go together. And you don't even need to take this much time. You can take as little as just one single note to do a good dovetail. Like you could have done that right here, and it would have worked fine. Okay, and just it's nice how it dances through the different instruments of the wind section. English horn, first clarinet, two flutes, oboe, back to clarinet, and nice little touches here and there. Just adding a little color, a little harmonic depth. And just a nice vibe all throughout. Good balancing by the horns. Not really seeing a huge amount wrong. There might be some things that people caught on Facebook. A few details of harmony or a note here and there. But so far looking pretty good. Now, about the only issue, the only strong issue I have here is that the more you add to Ravel in terms of counter motion, then the more careful you have to be, right? Because Ravel's original conception is just so clear and so clean that adding more to it has a tendency to cloud things up. And that's even true of my own arrangement. I feel my own arrangement is pretty good, but still, I have a question whether or not that Ravel would have added things the way that I added, and whether or not those would be considered to somewhat cloud or complicate the clarity of what's going on there. See, this is all really nice. I like this. Pianissimo swells in the winds, and this is a very beautiful, very blithe kind of little counter statement here. But going up into it is cool, and then this little moment here is good because it has a bit of a space in which to play. But then after that, I feel it tends to sort of not corrupt, but to kind of complicate things a little bit out of the character of the music. Now, it's interesting how you have the violins trading off, and that's just a fun kind of a thing. And here you thicken the voice of these strings by adding second flute, and that's a nice little touch there. It might not be needed, but it's still pretty cool. And this is very, very nice. This staccato, tremolo, upward climb. And these were all, these two, once you've done it, it's less surprising. So these two are less effective, but doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Shouldn't matter. It doesn't mean you shouldn't continue to do it. And then when it comes in here in strings, it's very, very nice. I liked that a lot. And what I also liked about this was the way that this had enough weight to where rehearsal number 2, there was really significant. There was significance to the diminuendo, right? And it's interesting how you sort of take some of the energy out of this and just make it kind of more barren rather than keeping up the pace. That is also very interesting. So the statement is pretty good. This high bassoon note is pretty cool. I forgot to mention, this is really the best part of the whole passage, is this pluck. Then stop note, pluck, stop note. I really like that a lot. And then, just going to English horn and then to clarinet. It's kind of neat the way that you work this around. This is not going to come across quite as powerfully as you think, but it's still a pretty neat idea. Perhaps more effective if it had gone to this chord, right? If it had ended up in, rather than being a voicing this way, if it had ended up with this voicing, then I think it would have been a more effective transition. And it goes on. Now, there's a problem here, and that is, see, you're doing octaves here, and you're plucking the string loudly, and then you're followed by rests, and then you want a pluck of the harmonic, and then you're immediately going to this again. These two notes are the same string, right? Unless you intend this to sound 2 octaves higher, correct? So, because if you intended this pitch sounding harmonic, then you would have to play it on the same string that you're plucking this, right? And same thing all the way through here. Okay, good on you for putting in a few things. Now, I think that this is a little, I think it's good enough just to say A flat instead of La flat there. Yeah, I understand you want to do all French markings on this, but still, it might be a bit much to do that with harp. This is nice. I like that a lot. Generally speaking, the orchestration is done fairly nicely, and all the nice little touches, the little staccatissimo trumpet, muted trumpet is nice. So this was an interesting harmonization. It's way fuller. It's almost Brahmsian compared to the way Ravel would probably score this. Yeah. And then the big payoff right here, Just to analyze this really quickly, you've got flutes and strings on the main melody, with clarinets an octave below that, and trumpets sort of sharing the same thing as the clarinet. Clarinets and trumpets do make a good team up, but it works. In this instance, I would say, you could easily have done divisi on the second violins and then gotten a more balanced combined texture there. The strings tend to be the go-between between, like, say, trumpets and clarinets, or trumpets and winds. When you add that together, it sort of smooths out the tone. And then you've got the little, walk down in oboe, and yeah. I mean, it all works pretty well. And it's a good step down to the cool down here. Yeah. I thought that was pretty nice. A bit on the full side. So it just sort of, there isn't a sense of slight release that you might need, but it eventually gets there. So, yeah, I think you could have marked this cello soli here, just to give it a little bit more, a little bit more oomph, and here you've got horn doubling on it, so it's going to stand out. That line is going to stand out, but still, just let the cellos know what's going on there, what their role is in the orchestra right there. Nice little English horn. And this kind of goes on and on. It's actually supposed to be da di da di da di da but instead of just kind of going on da di da di da di da di da di da di da. But that's all right. But it's a question of, like, the phrasing of the melody, right? This is meant to be a repeat of this. It's a setup of that, right? Okay, but all good. I don't even think you need this right in here. This doubling by the flute. That just seems a little extra. So, okay, sur la touche or flautando, right? I mean, which one do you really want? So flautando is going to be, I mean, sur la touche, that's enough for you to say that. You don't need to say flautando if you're going to say sur la touche, all right? They're as much the same thing as if you say both. The players will just scratch their heads, right? You just want to reduce the amount of questions you get asked. And then, yeah, this was kind of fun. Second clarinet to first bassoon to second bassoon. That is something I haven't seen yet, is trading off from first to second bassoon. It's kind of fun. And this, this really divided up pizzicato, syncopating across two beats over 3/4. That was really unexpected. It was a nice touch. I like that a lot. And this was all very delicate. And of course, adding a jazz chord at the end, that was very naughty, but all good, all in good fun. So yeah, anyways, really enjoyed looking at this. It's very cool. I understand where you're coming from with this, and very fun score, and good way to get this video started as well. You can go and listen to this by finding Guillermo's original post, and I think he's got a SoundCloud link to it, and try to do that with everybody else on this if you're very interested in their score. And this one's definitely worth listening to. As are pretty much all of them that put up a SoundCloud link or some other kind of audio link. Now we've got Karl's piece, and this has got some really nice ideas in it. I think it needs a lot of work still. Just in it's sort of like I guess this is draft 4 of what Karl's been working on. I mean, I hope I got the most recent version. Anyhow, it's there are a few problems here and there, but it's nothing too big. Yeah, so the thing that I would comment here is that you're trading from clarinet to second violin, back to clarinet, and then to horn. So we immediately run into a balance problem, especially with muted violins, right? So there's no way muted second violins are going to provide any kind of timbral or dynamic match to first clarinet. It's just not going to be. And also, if you really do want an overlap, then you should overlap on one note, right? So both notes. I would say both the clarinet and the violin should play maybe this note. Do you know what I mean? So that provides the smoothest overlap. That's one of Rimsky-Korsakov's rules. But that's not to say that this wouldn't work without a little tweaking. This is a lovely touch right here, and I mean, it's interesting to have the horn playing this single note. It might be better as a bassoon note. Do you know what I mean? There's kind of no need to go first, second, and then third. I mean, the third horn could just, and actually this should be first and second with this kind of scoring. So the second horn could just play this until the first horn was ready to come in. However, the first horn is the most overbalanced of them all, So it's sort of like you have like a medium strong, very sort of weak, medium strong, and then very penetrating, right? So the timbres just have different strengths to them, and they don't quite match on this page. Okay, this is nice. I like this a lot, and you've got some motion going on here. But once again, what did I say? I said do your entire first draft before you add harp. People are not paying attention to this because I can tell this feels like it was that this came first, or that this was in your mind all the time. Really try to have a functional. Everybody who's watching this, everybody who's paying attention, please, in this kind of scoring, try to add the harp last, because it's just it's too easy to just take over on certain things, right? And also you have to ask yourself, like, you have to be clear about this. If you play this on this, or if the harpist plays this on this string, it will sound here. If you intend this to sound like a harmonic here, then the harpist just has to go back down to their low D string, which is already vibrating, and play a harmonic on it to get this note sounding there. Also, octave harmonics on harps are not that successful. The resonance of the lower one tends to swallow the vibration of the higher one. Okay, that's something that's coming up in one of my orchestration tips. This is fine though. In sixths is fine, but just like when you have them an octave apart, one of them tends to blot the other one out. This is kind of nice. I like this in here, and it's good that you sort of settle on one voice for a while. I think that's nice, and this clarinet line leading up to it is cool. This wasn't the main thing that I was worried about, though. There's many more things to say in these 2 pages, but I don't want to just completely overdo it, on every single piece. This glissando, you should learn, this seems to be a Sibelius score, so you should use the harp glissando plugin. You basically just type in the notes of the glissando that you want, and then you just put the first note and then the last note, and you don't have to write in all of this stuff. Okay, that's a way better way to get tuned glissandos in any strange tuning that you like. All right, so and this is quite a ways to be glissandoing over. It would work better if it were here rather than here, right? You just because it gets to a certain slow point and the fingers are just dragging over the strings and they don't really have enough momentum to make a good sound. All right. And we seem to be relying on flute and first violins quite a lot in this section to get the idea across. Could be a little bit more variation there, and once again, you don't need to trade around the horn so much like this. It can just be a couple of players. Nice little touch here with the muted trumpet. This marking should go over here, right? Because there's the entrance, right? Okay. And yeah, this little these little guys going down here. I thought that this was kind of cool, actually. So it's really bassoon, bump, ting, ding, bump, ting, ting, bump, ting, ting. And going back and forth between the parts like this is probably unnecessary. I'd say just give it all to the second bassoonist. It's just better to have the part there because they're pacing themselves. You get a way better effect than if they're trading off. Yeah, and this was neat. I like this. Going to this section here. And, once again, we're just really relying on the flute quite a bit to state the melody. And here we've got octaves in flute and piccolo, and we've got the violins an octave below that. And, that's going to work. There was a couple of places here. I think it's coming up. There was a bit of a interruption. Yeah, see, right in here. See, you are asking us to go headlong into this big, massive thing here. And there's kind of nothing going on here after that. We could really use some support from the other winds. You're asking us to go into here, and there's very little in terms of a pulse. You're pulling back more and more. This this staccato, sorry, the legato octaves here are just really not pushing at the pulse very much. And here there is like almost nothing going on with your lower winds. Or percussion or brass or anything like that. It just seems to have been all given to the cellos, and there's kind of nothing going on there. You could have done the same thing here with, you could have had like maybe contrabassoon going boop, and and then the two bassoonists doing atu going boink boink, and then the cellos going staccato. Or you could have had this pizzicato, or just a number of different things. But this real drag here on this low contra bass. I keep wanting to say, I hate CB. I keep wanting to say double bass. This double bass low note seems to, when added to the bassoon, seems to really check the whole momentum of what we're going to here, right? And then we get to here, and you cut out the winds, and it turns into more of a brass chorale with string octaves and a bass in the to sort of I was going to say the bass is doubled with bassoon, the bass instruments, the lower strings I should say, and so I felt like here you could have had you're just relying on the trumpets, and so the trumpets are really going to stand out here as opposed to a more kind of a more symphonic texture. It's going to feel almost like a more of a chamber type of texture here, right? Rather than that beautiful mixed sound. And then this works pretty well. Just backing off here. If this is too loud here, it's going to mess with the English horn line. Right? The way that your playback worked, it was barely noticeable at all. But yeah. But you've got that with, with the cellos, like doing a unison with the cellos, and I mean, I guess that works fine. I'm wondering if this could have been staccato, and just a single, rather than legato. Anyway, and so I've kind of used up the time here. There are more things to say, but the ending very cool. I like that a lot. I like this little thing in here. That was very cool. And violas, or the viola solo. That was nice. With celesta. Okay, so all good for the most part on this last page. So just watch out for impulse, propelling your piece forwards and some of those other issues. But I did like this a lot. There were some real imaginative ideas and colors in this. Just because I find, a lot of little things to pick apart doesn't mean that it wasn't a good effort. So, and this was a really great effort, and I really enjoyed reading it. So thanks so much for sharing it with me. Now for Cameron's score, which is kind of cool because it includes an alto sax part and a bass clarinet part. And it's just a nice score. It's partial, but partial is good. Partial gives me time to just really focus in on, different points a little bit in more fine detail. Okay. So there's a little bit of timpani covering, some of the syncopation here. And that's kind of fun. Bass clarinet on this line here. Now, it's basically just doubling the viola. And so, and we've also got bassoon kind of covering a similar section in a more rhythmic way, rather than just harmonically. And, we sort of veer into horn territory. Now, this horn is going to stand out a bit. It's not going to be quite as... See, like, if this were P, and this were P, and that were pianissimo, then it would be a smoother balance, right? This is nice, going up to the cor anglais part, and then having the English horn, sort of sit on that as a pedal point. Now, here, way overbalanced with these higher horns. It's just, it's going to, you could be P here with your horns, and it would still provide a nice balance to everything else. Like, you could mark everything else mezzo forte, including the strings, and then the horns P, and then you would have a nice balance there. There's kind of no need to bring out... This is a little bit like... end game instruments in a game of chess. End game pieces in a game of chess. Bringing out your queen right at the beginning of the game is what this sort of feels like to me, with the heavy brass coming in right away. But anyways, if everybody plays at P dynamic, it can be a successful way of bringing harmony into a score, but it can weigh things down quite a bit. All right, just warning there. This is a nice way of harmonizing this in here. Interesting bass clarinet doubling the cellos. That will give you kind of a more fluty type sound, or kind of a hooting kind of a mixed sound, as opposed to a warmer sound, which you would get with doubling with bassoon, as you do here. Now, everybody seems to want, or a lot of people seem to want to do a lot of slurring with their bass line, but I got to warn everybody, that really does rob it robs the pulse if there's no pointing. I mean, you got your timpani, so that's a bit of a pointy sound, but it's still playing at pianissimo. One stroke at mezzo forte, and then coming back to pianissimo. It doesn't really have that strong downbeat pulse every two bars. So yeah, that's just my observation there. This is cool. These little flutes here. This was similar to approach I think that Brett took when I looked at his scores yesterday. Yeah, so this is going to be fine. You don't really need the harmonization, though, of the flutes, right? You've already got the harmony with the oboes. And just, having the flutes go all the way down to, like, G flat and F, our second flute, it's just really not... It can't compete with the oboe anyway, so just why not just leave it out and just do A2 flutes, so you get a clearer sound going down to B flat, and then, the harmony with the oboes can just be what it is. Do you know what I mean? And now up here, if you're going to really just throw the harmony into the works right up against the flutes here, then there's going to be a drag against the clarity of the way that the phrasing works here in the flutes, right? If the oboes are just right behind them, even if you're saying pianissimo here and piano there, it's still not enough, especially as you have like no dynamic nuances. We're not being told that this is going to go up to like a crescendo or anything like that. So there's kind of no clear way that this is going to stand out in, as from what I can see or what I can hear in my inner ear as I read this. Now we get to this little part here, and the alto sax comes in, and that's very, very charming. It's nice. It's almost a pity, the sound is so unique that it just sort of makes me want to have it not used up or used for too long and just come back and forth as it's needed, right? So like, almost feels like here it's almost going on for too long, even though it was not really happening at all before. Or, wouldn't it be interesting for the alto sax to sort of trade off with the bassoon, which are, they're very similar tones when the players want them to be. This is neat. This little, dun 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 dun. I like that a lot. Yeah, and here maybe pizzicato instead of just arco. You just need more pulse in here. There's a lot of long harmonies being played, and there's not a whole lot of boop boop boop. To sort of, there's not a whole lot of pacing to keep the energy flowing. But those are my comments on this. Really cool score, Cameron. Just really enjoyed looking at it, and just everything seems to be very standout and very original, and this is no exception. And now Tiago's up next, and the comment that I've got here, just overall in terms of layout, it's interesting that you chose a chamber music sort of approach. Just doubled clarinets, single winds, otherwise one horn, and then this. I mean, this, if you had a particular student group or chamber orchestra group in mind, then this would probably fit them pretty well. So here's some thoughts about this. Okay, now you're taking a safe road here by having your two clarinets basically just double violas and cellos, right? So there's just absolutely no danger whatsoever that you'll have a sort of a smoother sound there. Okay, however, you are taking away from the ability of the for there to be some kind of strikingly unique voice standing out from the texture, right? So it's just all very homogeneous. There's nothing wrong with that, but let's see as we go on where it takes us. And horn one doubling the double basses from an octave above, and that's adding a bit of syncopation. Pizzicato on the basses. You can just do this pizzicato as single quarter notes, right? Because they will tend to resonate in the chamber on their own, just like a timpani stroke. Okay, so you don't need to mark them out with long time values. And tremolo is cool. All right. So now we're sort of trading off. If you want to dovetail, like to go from one instrument to another and make it seem as if it really is going, generally speaking, not all cases, as you'll see in my arrangement eventually, but generally speaking, you want to double one note, right? Usually the first note of the bar that you trade over on, right? So if you were to give the oboes this D flat, although it's kind of a loud note for the oboes, but if you were to give them the D flat, then it would be a smoother transition to the oboe. Now, generally speaking, you do not have any slurs on your wind parts, and they really do need them. And you don't have any nuances either, like little hairpins giving these phrases some life, right? So do you really want the clarinets and the violas to just go da 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 da, or do you want them to go da 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 da? Do you want it to breathe? Do you know what I'm saying? Right now, this isn't quite breathing enough, right? So, your phrasing should at least match what you've got in the strings, or be something different, maybe. I don't know. It depends on how you feel the pulse. Do you want it to be da 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 da, or do you want it to be da 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 da, or do you want it to be da 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 da? Right. So you just really have to think about these. Like how you really want it to feel. Hear that in your head. Play it on your keyboard or whatever you're using to score with. Right. Think about those decisions. Okay, moving on. So really, you're kind of still taking the safe approach, but you're not doubling the cello anymore, right? So, kind of interesting as to why you didn't see fit to make it to have some continuity there, right? Now, this is nice, right? Finally the clarinet gets to speak all by itself. It's just so powerful. Simplicity is so powerful. Just stating a single line of notes in one instrument can be such a unique texture. And especially if you are just taking the approach right away that it's going to be smooth and silky and everybody is going to be playing all together, including on all the melodies. Right, because here you're doing the same approach again. In a way, I feel you don't need to. right? You don't really see here. Finally, you've got the slurs put into your winds, and that's good. But you don't need to double oboes and flutes together. You get more of a kind of a wind band sound if you do that. Now, of course, you've got the violins to sort of act as a bridge between those two sounds. But, once again, you just end up with a very, very smooth sound where everything is all put together. It's all blended together. And then here you really have this massive, I think there's a couple of wrong notes here. E flat and F and G flat, right? So so this probably is a mistake. I'm sure Nicholas caught this. He's been looking at a lot of the finer details of some of these scores, right? So, so watch out for that. But yeah, just really, this is a massive unison of all of these notes, right? And yeah, but at least you're doing some pizzicato here. Arco, that's an interesting effect. Usually the double basses are better or more sustaining at pizzicato, so they get pizzicato, and the cellos would get the longer note if it was needed. But that will work. Okay, and I think there's just one more page here. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just not sure about the reasoning behind this massive unison here. And also I'm just really, once again, missing the sense of dynamic flow, of dynamic nuance, right? Not a lot of dynamics marked in general, just a few here and there, like starting each basic section. Now this does not need to be down, if you're doing this tremolo here, it does not need to be pianissimo, okay, compared to what everything else is going on. It can all be piano, okay? I think you're trying to blend things here, and that's cool. But if you're doing pizzicato and cellos and you want to blend with the bassoons, then the bassoons should be marked staccato, right? Not as slurs. Yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say about it. I mean, it's good, but it's not very individualized, right? So think more about, allowing instruments to really speak out on their own and not combining them quite so much, because unnecessarily, right? All you really need is one wind instrument to back up these violins, or maybe like flutes A2 or something like that. You don't need all three of your melody players there at the top doubling it, right? Because this just sounds so unique in my mind, just looking at this one single solitary clarinet. It's fun. Okay, but look, really good first start. Keep working on it, or find something else to score, and just keep experimenting, okay? Because, it's worth pursuing, all right? Thanks so much for sharing this with me. I'm going to finish this video with Klaus's score, which is just enormous, and it's really more of a rethinking of the entire piece for a more, almost like a more crossover type of a score. And it, this, I kind of feel like somebody who is asked for like a 2-page report and getting handed a novel. Do you know what I'm saying? How do you start? You say, oh, hey, nice cover to your report. It's just really enormous. It's sprawling, and it's worth having a listen to the mock-up that he posted, which is still like, nothing compared to the way a real orchestra would be playing it. But yeah. So all I'm going to do is just pick a few spots on here, Klaus, and just decide, or tell you what I think about how they will actually sound. Do you know what I mean? Or what is the actual usefulness of them in terms, or playability of them orchestrally? What's the quality of the texture and so on. Okay, so let's throw 7 minutes of analysis at this and see what happens. Okay. So thank you for transposing. That makes my job easier. Now, in general, I've gotten a few big sprawling scores, and I just really prefer to see, to sort of see things combined as much as possible. So, I mean, this score has got a lot of, it's got a lot of separate functions for different instruments. So, so I guess it's just, it's just inevitable. But, it's just it's hard to fit it all on the screen. It's not that I can't read it or comprehend it. It's just that it's, it just gets to be so big. Like if this, I'm basically I'm recording this on a 4K screen, and this is what it would look like if I tried to get the whole score on there. Right? It's just so small. The notes are so small that I'm actually having a hard time looking at this on my screen, and it's about 14 inches high. So so let's take a look at this. Now you've got clarinet in B, meaning B flat, and clarinet in A, meaning A. And I don't know if you really need, you just need a couple of clarinets. It's really kind of no need to do that unless you have a really massive score and you have, like, say, 3 clarinets in B flat and 2 in A, or something sort of like Mahler or Strauss. Because I don't see you using the clarinets in a way that really distinguishes their character from one another. I don't sense that there's no contrast in the way, and of course a good clarinetist, if they get the sense that you want something a little darker or a little lighter, they can do that on either clarinet, right? So there's kind of no need for that. So you have just little bits, kind of atomized little bits of gestures put together, and they're not really actually adding up to the theme yet. It's just really, just kind of this big sort of wash of little things. Now I'm not really seeing any phrasing, and I'm not seeing any dynamics in the winds. So I'm just kind of not really getting much of a guide here. You just really want to be a little easier on your poor score reader. Now here is really where things start to take off. And we're starting to lead towards something real here. I don't see anything that wouldn't quite work, but it just needs a lot of finessing. Do you know what I mean? A lot of, 2 English horns. This would be massive. It would be hard to get together the money to put this, to mount this particular performance, I'm guessing. And just very big and splashy here. I've been hearing lots of people doing rolled timpani in these entries, and I don't think it is as, like, when you roll across an entire bar, or like 2 bars or even 4 bars. I don't think it's quite as powerful as just like, rolling into a beat, or, if the tempo is faster, maybe 1 bar is not so bad. But yeah, and you keep throwing this euphonium thing in there to double the bassoons. And then here there was another, which was kind of working with the horns. Okay. It's just a very, very big sound. I feel that this is going to sound almost wind band-like, because there are just so many winds going on, and the strings are engaged in just kind of more flutters and little bits of little bits of rhythm here and there. And this is kind of fun. This these little harmonics here. Now you have a bit of a repetition in here, and that is there is no need to add a harmonic circle over a note if you've already got the diamond fourth, right? So this is a redundancy. So just get rid of that. Don't mark that when you do those. Sibelius or whatever notation program this has should have a thing that stops you from doing that, from making that mistake. So this should be marked in tenor clef, okay, rather than just thrown out there, because this is basically a tenor passage. This is in the tenor register, so it should be in tenor clef. And you're basically just doubling the divisi the divisi lower part of the first violins, up to here. So that's going to be a very, very bright, very, very tense sound. Okay, I feel that this should have some kind of support at the pitch where it is. Like if you've got a piccolo, or if you've got an extra flute, it would be nice to kind of, sort of a silvery way to underline those pitches from above. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, and a sul tasto at mezzo forte with this big sort of swirling thing, I don't think is going to work. That's just my, I think that the players will read the sul tasto, and they'll just kind of play closer to the bridge than you think. Yeah. And if you are going to put an effect on the violins, you should put it onto the cellos if they're going to be playing along with it. Okay, so there's just no possible way I could get through everything that you've thrown in here. It's just enormous. And I hope that fills you with a sense of pride rather than frustration, okay? But anyhow, and you've got this sort of, this kind of almost like bolero type of thing going on in the timpani here. That's kind of fun. It's sort of like music for gala night. Do you know what I mean? Very big and very splashy and over the top, and that's great. I mean, I think it would actually be really fun to play once you got it completely worked out. I'm going to give you a little warning here. You are doing unison, pizzicato, and arco in the cellos. I just really want to check this to make sure that I got that right. Yeah. So you are doing unison, pizzicato, and arco on very high notes. I just have to warn you, I just do not feel that this is going to be very effective so high. Once you get to here, it's going to be more effective. But it's just going to be kind of, it's going to be as dry as a violin pizzicato. And if that's what you want there, that's going to be fine. Okay, I don't think that this substitutes for the pulse that you need from a strong bass line that is pointier in its emphasis. So going to arco here with the contrabass, this still drives me crazy, with the double basses, KB, contrabasses, I don't like that word. With the double basses, I think is more of a safe bet here. Do you know what I mean? This is kind of a fun little sort of falling down gesture here. Okay, well, wow, I could just spend all day on this. It just goes on, and it's just amazing. But I think in general, yeah. Okay, so I'll take it right up to here. So you got violas on that high D there, and yeah, that's actually kind of a nice effect right in here. Do you know what I mean? And then just sort of everybody is just kind of falling down into that texture, but then you've got the brass. Okay, what dynamic? Because this might as well not even happen if these brass are at mezzo forte, right? So if it's softer than that, if you came in at piano and this were like just a beautiful, softer type of chorale, then this would be fine. But I don't think that, if you're marking pianissimo on this, there's just no way it's going to survive through a more complex section here. All right? So look, this is the kind of score that I would get, and I would sit down and I would work on for like a 3-week lesson with a student, coaching them. Do you know what I mean? And we would probably spend the first hour on the first 30 or 40 bars. So, and there'd be lots of stuff to unpack, but this is just too big for me to really get to the end of the piece. I hope you can understand that, and apologies for not looking at the entire thing. There were some really great moments in here, but I will leave it up to the community to finish helping to analyze and pick apart this score a bit. And there's some stuff in here that's actually fairly, I think once you get past the middle, which is where you sort of stopped your demo, your mock-up, it's kind of what I would call just really more traditional, a type of orchestration, more of a traditional approach, which is not too different from some other things that I've seen, but definitely I hope I covered most of the wild stuff for you, and it was very, very fun looking at it, and thank you so much for sharing this with me, and, I think it is a fitting end to a whole batch of quite unusual, quite unique approaches to this piece.